finally a successful delivery from Hermès.
Grace Wales-Bonner was just announced as the creative director of menswear at Hermès, and I could not be more happy. Her first collection won't be till January 2027 though, so it's a really long wait, but I'm seated and I can wait, honestly. All the shows before then will be designed by the team.
Fashion journalist Roadman Fashion sharing his excitement there over a new appointment at Hermès on Tuesday. Jamie, who is Grace Wales-Bonner and why has she been chosen for this role?
Yeah, it's an interesting one from this week. She's a London-born designer of English and Jamaican heritage. She trained at Central St Martin's. She's kind of one of the up-and-coming future names of fashion. She's kind of constantly put forward whenever there was a big job coming up. It was suggested she would get it. She's won loads of industry prizes. She kind of mixes interesting design with music, literature. Her work explores kind of black identity, diasporic history, and she's collaborated kind of widely, most famously with Adidas on their kind of range of highly sought after sneakers, the Sambas. I don't know if you've noticed, Ollie, but Sambas are very cool.
Well, of course, the reason I noticed was when Rishi Sunak wore them and then everyone said they're not cool anymore.
Yes, exactly.
But that was partly her, was it, bringing those back?
Well, yeah, exactly. She did a range that were incredibly well sought after. I don't think Rishi Sunak was wearing them, despite the fact that he could probably afford to. So kind of why, I guess, is why has she been chosen? Hermès is kind of famous for continuity, craftsmanship. The person that was there before that she's succeeding, Veronique Nichonion, was nearly in charge for 40 years of Hermès' menswear. But what Wales-Bonner is kind of presumably bringing is a bit of fresh impetus, cultural credibility. The big news is that she's the first black woman to head up a fashion house in creative director role, which is incredible. I guess the question is, like, we've seen people like Virgil Abloh, other, black designers come to the fore, but maybe potentially things haven't massively changed in terms of the experience of people of colour in the fashion industry. So there is always a question with this kind of stuff as to whether it's a symbolic appointment or whether there will be systemic change. And that obviously puts a huge amount of pressure on her, and that's not what I'm intending to do by bringing this. I think that she'll do an amazing job, it sounds like. But the more broader question about where the industry is perhaps the most interesting from this appointment.
Yes, although, I mean, it is true, probably, isn't it, Harriet, that we wouldn't be talking about this story if she was white, because it's not just that she's a woman. As Jamie was just saying, her predecessor at Hermès was also a woman. So it is the fact that she's black that's got this a lot of press, alongside people saying she's great and she deserves this, of course. But nonetheless, that is the thing that, people are touting as having implications for the fashion industry. What do you think those implications could be?
That is a difficult question. Obviously, there are limits to representation. It doesn't necessarily mean systemic change. But at the same time, I think that detracts from the fact that it is a historic piece of information that the first ever black woman to lead design at a major fashion house. I am not saying that means that things will necessarily become better for people of like black backgrounds and ethnic minorities in the fashion industry, but there are limits to representation, but that is still a moment. And it is also true that her father was born in Jamaica, and her collections have typically kind of showcased inspiration from the Black and Caribbean diaspora. So, and fashion has always been able to shine light on like issues like support for the LGBTQ community and cancer awareness and the environmental concerns of the industry. Like, fashion does have the potential to showcase diversity in that way. But the question of whether or not it will actually change anything, I think, detracts from the fact that it is still a really big deal.
I suppose the thing is, though, Arion, you can have a diversity of design regardless of who you are. I mean, that's why you have so many men designing for women, and as we see here, women designing for men, right? So is it the authenticity that makes it different? It's the fact that someone says, this is my heritage and I'm bringing it into these clothes, rather than just, I've been inspired by some Chinese prints.
Well, the strange thing almost about Wales-Bonner's appointment is that she's almost a continuity candidate. She's being regarded by analysts and fashion commentators as being a person who's very unlikely to disrupt the brand of Hermès's fundamental DNA. You know, her appointment is seen as a continuation of Hermès's tradition of investing in designers who combine creativity with craft. You know, her experience with menswear tailoring and her sensitivity to texture and detail and cultural reference, that makes her a very natural fit for Hermès. You know, she's like, while Wales Bonner was highly respected for her artistic vision and her collaborations, particularly with Adidas, as Jamie was saying, that side of it does demonstrate something about her commercial appeal, and I think Hermès will be interested in that. But I think that altogether, she's such an artistic, cultural person. Like, she's not just done fashion, she also did these exhibitions at the Serpentine Gallery and at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And so she's a thinking person, and I think that is hugely attractive to Hermès and suggests that maybe the brand is like, well, how can we keep doing what we're doing but find a younger person who's going to provide a new kind of appeal to, we hope, the next generation of Hermès customers, because we can't trade on selling to old people forever and people with the money to buy a Birkin bag who are eventually going to die out, and we're going to have someone waiting in the wings to, like a customer waiting in the wings to take over from them.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about high fashion labels, isn't it, Jamie? And we've talked about them on the show before in different contexts, but ultimately, most people listening to this who have a designer brand will have so in the form of a belt or a handbag or a fragrance. Most people can't afford the clothes that she's going to be designing. So actually you can have as much diversity as you want behind the scenes, but actually it's a very narrow spectrum of people who buy this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, looking at the kind of wider fashion industry, it's gone through a massive boom during the pandemic era, which was actually purely because the rich people had more money. You know, who was the people that had a lot of money to spend inside when they're in lockdown? It was the rich people who would buy this kind of stuff. Now, luxury growth has slowed and dipped, and the sector is large but kind of resilient. And brands are looking for that, like you say, that new, maybe younger creative leadership that can open up new ways of buying things. I guess also the other thing is that luxury brands aren't only selling products, they're now selling, you know, stories, like museum collaborations, limited edition objects, experiences. As Arion was saying, Wales Bonner has a history of that. So that idea of kind of cultural curation, it's a kind of multi-layered thing that they can now sell. And the kind of trickle-down cultural influence does mean that what happens at places like Hermès can reshape like mainstream aesthetics, you know, what the shoes look like, what the tailoring looks like, even kind of how things are taught in design schools. It might not seem like, yes, the people that are buying it is a small group, but actually the kind of cultural effect that these people have, these people have, and the places have, the fashion houses have, is kind of massive.
Yeah, so I might feel, Harriet, that I have no connection to what the menswear range at Hermès is, but actually when it trickles down to what my shoes from River Island look like, then I might.
You absolutely might. And I think that an interesting case study in this regard is the new global CEO of Chanel, who is a woman for the first time. So obviously Chanel is still held by the Wertheimer family. The guy who founded the company alongside Coco Chanel, the two brothers in the family are still the chairman and still the head of watches. But yeah, in 2021, they appointed this new global CEO, Lena Nair, who is now one of the most important people at Chanel. So it's the first time a woman at the helm of Chanel. And she has massively increased the funding for Chanel's charitable wing. So now it's one of the biggest philanthropic organizations in the entire world working to empower women and girls. So I do think that there is a bigger picture here, and the bigger picture is that women are starting to move into leadership positions among the biggest fashion brands. Because it's crazy that women make up 85% of the consumer base for clothes and accessories, but only 14% of leadership positions in the biggest fashion brands. But that is starting to change. There was a big change between 2021 and 2023 in terms of incoming CEOs. It's still not a great split, but more fashion brands are beginning to choose female CEOs to represent the women they're actually selling to. Like, for example, So Bernard Arnault, who is the owner of LVMH, which is Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, it's like the French multinational conglomerate that's probably like owns most of the luxury goods brands in the world. And he has chosen his only daughter to be the new CEO and chairman of Dior, which is kind of one of the really profitable brands. And they made that announcement in 2023. So now his daughter Delphine is one of the most powerful women in the world overnight.
But through nepotism.
Well,
It's a mixed picture, isn't it?
But he has 5 children and only one daughter, and he picked his daughter. So I'm saying that the picture is still not great. It's still not great in the boardrooms, but it is beginning to change.
I'm curious whether I'm not going to ask you if you have any Hermès pieces, but I am curious if you've had any fashion nightmares. Arion, in your youth, I'm imagining swaggy jeans for some reason.
I did have swaggy jeans, and I had long braids. It was an absolutely terrible look. I had them for about 3 months, and they were itchy, and I had to get rid of them. It was, in fact, there's only one photograph of it, and that photo is a photo that my wife laughs at regularly.
I'd love to see that. Please send it to me. Jamie, your fashion disasters.
So many. I was very much a indie kid, so I had jeans that were like unbelievably skinny, you know, the kind of ones where I started wearing like my girlfriend's skinny jeans, like that level of skinny that was just like horrible, because I like, you know, I'm not a kind of skinny waif type figure, so I was pulling myself into these but I was just desperate to be one of the Strokes.
Harriet?
God, I only have fashion faux pas. I was in the office yesterday in sequin leggings by accident. But I will say, like, I went through kind of a major punk phase, and I did have a pair of boots that had like spiky metal bits on them, which I think with the safety pin earrings and the skull rings was like maybe not the most chic of looks. But now it's like 99% of my wardrobe is either sequin or leopard print. So I'm waving the flag for fashion faux pas every day.